Every afternoon at exactly 2 o'clock, the old man pushed open the cafe door and stepped inside as if he belonged to another century. The bell above the entrance rang with a thin metallic cry that seemed too sharp for the quiet room. Cold air followed him in, even during the warmest days of summer. People noticed that detail first. The sudden chill, the way conversation slowed when he crossed the floor. He always chose the same corner table by the window, where light fell in a pale square across the wood. He removed his gray coat with careful movements, folding it across the back of the chair as though someone else might need space beside him. Then he waited. Not impatiently, not nervously, just waiting. The waitress never asked what he wanted. She brought soup, bread, water, and every single day she placed 2 sets of cutlery on the table. Most customers assumed it was a mistake, until they realized it was not, because no one ever joined him. He sat upright, eyes focused on the empty chair across from him, nodding faintly at moments when no one had spoken. Sometimes his lips moved, soft words shaped in silence. Sometimes he paused mid-bite, as if listening carefully to someone else chewing. On rainy days, when the windows trembled and thunder rolled above the city, he leaned slightly to one side, creating space on the bench beside him, as if protecting someone from the draft, as if shielding someone smaller. The first time you saw it, you told yourself it was grief, loneliness, age. But then you noticed something that did not belong to grief at all. The second spoon shifted, just slightly, a faint scrape against porcelain when his hands were folded neatly in his lap. You blinked and told yourself it was imagination, yet the sound returned, soft, deliberate, as if someone careful and polite was eating beside him. No one dared to ask him why he always dined with an invisible guest. No one wanted to break whatever fragile illusion wrapped around that corner table. Until one afternoon when the rain came down like falling glass and the cafe filled beyond capacity, only one chair remained empty, across from him. And someone new decided that silence was less frightening than standing in the storm. That was the day everything changed. Because when she sat down and looked directly at the empty space he had been guarding for months, her expression shifted. Confusion first, then discomfort, then something far worse, recognition. Her fingers hovered above the untouched spoon. Steam curled upward from a bowl that no one remembered being served, and for the first time since the old man began his ritual, someone else felt the breath that did not belong to the living brush gently against their skin. Every afternoon at exactly 2 o'clock, the old man took the same corner table by the window. The bell above the cafe door rang softly, and a cold draft followed him inside. He moved slowly, as if the air itself resisted his steps. The wooden floor creaked beneath his shoes. He always wore a gray coat, no matter the season. In summer, sweat gathered along his thin neck. In winter, frost clung to the hem. The waitress placed a single plate before him. Soup, bread, a glass of water. Nothing more. He never looked at the menu. He never looked at anyone. Outside, traffic roared. Inside, spoons tapped porcelain. Low conversations blended with the hiss of the espresso machine. Yet around his table, there was always silence. People noticed him. They whispered. They guessed. Widower, war veteran, abandoned father. But no one asked until the rain came. It was a hard rain, the kind that bruised the windows and flooded the gutters. The cafe filled quickly, every table taken, every chair occupied, except one, the chair across from the old man. A young woman entered, soaked from head to toe. Her umbrella had broken, her hair clung to her cheeks. She scanned the room. Only one empty seat remained, across from him. She hesitated. Her fingers tightened around her bag. Then she walked forward. Her shoes left wet prints behind her. She stopped at his table. Her voice trembled slightly. "May I sit here?" He lifted his eyes. They were pale, almost colorless. He nodded once. She sat, close enough to hear his breathing. It was shallow, uneven. The smell of old wool and something metallic drifted toward her. Not strong, just enough to notice. The waitress brought her coffee. Steam rose between them like a thin veil. Minutes passed. He dipped his bread into the soup. Slowly, carefully, as if performing a ritual, the young woman tried to ignore the weight of the silence. Finally, she spoke. "You come here every day." He swallowed. "Yes, always alone." His hand paused above the bowl. For a moment, the cafe seemed to shrink. The rain grew louder. The lights flickered. He looked at the empty chair beside him. "No," she frowned, "but you are sitting alone." His lips twitched. Not alone. Her skin prickled. She glanced at the empty space to his right. Nothing was there. Just air. Just a chair. The old man reached forward. He adjusted the second plate. The young woman froze. There had been no second plate before. Now there was. White porcelain, identical to his, filled with soup, steam rising gently. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She had not seen the waitress bring it. No footsteps, no sound of dishes. He lifted his spoon, then he paused again. Disses P. What he paused again. As if waiting, his eyes softened. "You must eat before it gets cold," he whispered. The young woman stared at the untouched bowl. The steam curled upward, slow, delicate. Her coffee had stopped steaming long ago. She reached toward the plate. Her fingers hovered above the surface. Warm, very warm. The spoon on that plate trembled. Not from her touch, it trembled on its own. A faint clink against porcelain. Her breath caught around them. No one seemed to notice. People laughed. Glasses clinked. Music played softly from hidden speakers. She looked back at the old man. His eyes were no longer pale. They reflected something. Movement. A shape sitting beside him. A shadow that bent forward. A shadow that lifted a spoon. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood. The cafe fell silent at last. Every head turned. "What is wrong?" the waitress asked. The young woman pointed at the table. "There are 2 plates." The waitress blinked. "Yes, one for him, one for you." "No," the young woman whispered. "One for him, one for." She stopped, slowly. She looked back down. There was only 1 plate, 1 bowl of soup, 1 spoon. The other chair was empty, completely empty. The old man watched her carefully, his expression calm, gentle, almost kind. "You saw her," he said quietly. Her mouth went dry. "Who?" "My daughter." He gestured toward the empty chair. "She has eaten here with me every day, since the accident." The word accident lingered in the air like smoke. The young woman felt a chill crawl along her spine. "But that is not possible," she whispered. The old man tilted his head. "Is it not?" The lights flickered again, this time longer. The cafe dimmed for a fraction of a second. The room seemed older. Paint peeling from the walls, chairs overturned, dust thick in the air. The young woman blinked. Everything returned to normal. The old man leaned closer. "You asked why I eat alone," he said. His breath brushed her cheek. "Cold, too cold. I do not eat alone." He smiled. "And now, neither do you." "And now, neither do you." The words pressed against her ears, heavy, unwelcome. The young woman tried to step back. Her legs refused to move. Her knees felt locked in place. The air around the table grew thick, hard to breathe. She looked down again. The second plate was back, closer this time. So close that it touched her sleeve. The soup trembled. Tiny ripples formed on the surface, as if something invisible had just dipped a spoon inside. The old man watched her face carefully. "You can see her," he said softly. "Most people cannot." Her pulse pounded in her throat. "I see nothing," she whispered. He shook his head slowly. "You see enough." The temperature dropped. A cold draft brushed past her ear. She felt it clearly, the faint pressure of someone leaning close, breathing beside her. Her skin erupted in goosebumps. She turned sharply toward the empty chair. For a split second, she saw the outline, a thin figure. Long hair falling forward, head bowed over the plate. Then it was gone. Her heart slammed against her ribs. What happened to her? She forced herself to ask. The old man's fingers tightened around his spoon. A car, rain like this, a driver who never stopped. His voice did not tremble. It sounded practiced. "Rehearsed. Every day I come here," he continued. "Every day she sits with me. Every day she eats." He leaned closer again, but she does not speak. His pale eyes drifted to the young woman until someone notices her. Silence swallowed the space between them. The rain outside struck the windows violently. The young woman felt tears burn behind her eyes. "This is grief," she told herself. "Just grief." But grief does not move spoons. Grief does not breathe against your ear. The second spoon lifted slowly, clear as daylight, floating above the bowl. Soup dripped from it, thick, golden. The old man smiled with relief. "You see her clearly now." The young woman tried to scream. No sound escaped. The spoon lowered again. Clink against porcelain. Across the cafe, a glass shattered on the floor. People jumped. Voices rose in confusion, but no one looked at their table. No one noticed the second spoon moving again. "Why me?" she gasped. The old man studied her face. "Because she chooses." The words fell like stones. "She chooses someone new. When she grows tired." The young woman's stomach twisted. "Tired of what?" He finished her thought. "Tired of sitting in silence. Tired of waiting." He reached across the table and gripped her wrist. His hand was freezing, painfully cold. She is lonely, he said, and loneliness is contagious. The outline beside her sharpened. The figure lifted its head slowly. The young woman saw empty eyes, dark hollows where light should be. Water dripped from her hair onto the table, drop by drop, but the table remained dry. You can leave, the old man said gently, if she allows it. The shadow turned its face toward her. The cafe lights dimmed again. This time they did not return to full brightness. Everything looked faded, washed of color. The young woman pulled her arm free with sudden force. Her chair toppled backward. The sound finally broke through the strange barrier of silence. Several customers stared. "Are you all right?" the waitress called. The young woman pointed again at the empty chair. "Look, she is there." No one reacted. No one saw. She looked back one final time. The shadow was standing now, tall, unnaturally still. Its hand extended toward her, cold fingers inches from her own. The old man remained seated, calm, almost peaceful. "She needs someone to sit with her," he said quietly. "You asked why I eat alone. Now you understand." The young woman felt her strength draining, as if something invisible wrapped around her ribs, squeezing. The cafe walls seemed to stretch farther away. Voices sounded distant, echoing. The shadow stepped closer, its face inches from hers. Its mouth opened slowly, and for the first time, it spoke, a whisper so soft it barely existed. "Stay." The words slid into her ears like ice water. The old man closed his eyes. "Thank you," he murmured. The young woman tried to run. Her body leaned forward, but her feet would not obey. The chair beside the old man scraped against the floor, pulling itself closer to the table, waiting. The shadow lowered into it gracefully. Then its head turned toward her again, still smiling, still whispering, "Stay." The cafe never returned to the way it had been before that afternoon. Even after the rain stopped and the streets outside dried beneath a pale evening sun, something inside remained altered. The young woman stood frozen beside the table, her pulse roaring in her ears, while the old man watched her with an expression that looked almost like relief, not joy. Not cruelty, relief, as if a burden he had carried for years had finally shifted onto willing shoulders. The shadow beside her grew steadier, less transparent, its outline no longer trembling like smoke but firm like flesh. Its hollow eyes softened, its lips curved faintly. The whisper returned, no longer distant but clear again. "Stay with me." Her fear twisted into something more complicated. Pity, understanding, an ache she could not explain. She saw then what loneliness had done to both of them. The old man who refused to release the past, the presence that refused to fade. Two souls suspended in a moment that never ended. The room seemed to breathe in and out slowly, as if the walls themselves were alive. Customers resumed their conversations in fragments, unaware that reality had thinned at one small corner table. The young woman felt the weight pressing against her chest ease slightly, not because the presence had gone, but because it no longer felt hostile. It felt hungry. Hungry for acknowledgement, hungry for memory. The old man lowered his eyes. His shoulders sagged as though years had suddenly caught up with him. "Thank you," he whispered again. This time his voice trembled. The shadow turned from her and looked at him. For a brief, impossible second, the young woman saw warmth in its expression. A daughter seated beside her father, a child sharing a quiet meal. The spoon lifted once more, dipped into the soup, and then slowly lowered for the final time. The air shifted, the cold retreated, the pressure around her ribs dissolved. The outline began to fade, not violently, not in horror, but gently, like mist rising from water at dawn. The old man reached out, his hand passing through empty space. His breath broke. Tears welled in his pale eyes but did not fall. The second plate vanished. No sound, no flash, simply gone. Only one bowl remained on the table, one spoon, one man. He sat very still. The young woman watched as the years returned to his face, settling into his skin like dust. He looked smaller now, fragile, alone in a way that felt real for the first time. Outside, sunlight touched the window. Inside, warmth returned gradually to the room. The old man stood with difficulty, placing coins beside his untouched bread. He paused before leaving, glancing at the chair that had remained empty for so long. Then he nodded once, as if saying farewell to something only he could truly understand. When he stepped out into the quiet street, the bell above the door rang softly again. This time, no cold air followed him. The young woman remained at the table, staring at the single-place setting. She realized the question that had haunted the cafe for months no longer needed an answer. He had never been eating alone. And now at last he truly was.